Welcome back, investor. We got a great show for you today. I'm very excited about it. It's somebody, a guest who really captures like the essence of what we do on the show. It's like how to think outside the box, dig deep into what you really want, what kind of lifestyle you really want, and then figuring out how to pay for it. And so today we have Ladislas Maurice, and he is the wandering investor, specializes in international investing, specifically by purchasing real estate abroad for both investing purposes and for residency permits, citizenship, things like that. And so he is the guy that you want to go to if you ever want to spend any time living abroad, which we have done in our past. I mean, for those of you who've been listening for a while, my husband and I retired early. We've been traveling full time the last couple of years with our homeschooled kids and just enjoying a financially free kind of life and having just more optionality and being able to really think hard about what you want. And most people, they'll see like what we're doing on social media, like, oh, that's so great. I wish we could do that. But I find that they don't really want to do it because they've got kids in school, they've got jobs, they've got family. And so it looks really good from the outside. But I think it's important to learn about what you're looking for those of us who really want a more travel heavy or international lifestyle. It's really important to know what's out there because one of the reasons we haven't done more traveling abroad is just the bureaucracy, paperwork, red tape, all of that. And getting through that has been a real challenge for me and kind of considering hiring a consultant to help me through that space. So Ladislas is just going to dig in deep on the types of things we need to be aware of and how to actually do it. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, wandering investor. So introduce yourself briefly to the listener, kind of describe what you do, and then we'll dig in more to your background and how you got here.
Sure, sounds good, Emma. So I did a bachelor's degree in business in Canada, and then I studied business and law for grad school in Australia. And then I started working for Nestle, the big food company in Switzerland at their headquarters. And then they sent me for 7 years to Africa. So first South Africa for a few years, and then Ghana for 3 years. So effectively, I spent most of my 20s in Africa. And my last role there was being in charge of the milk business for Nestle for a few West African countries. I was sitting on the executive board there. And at the age of 30, I decided I wanted to do something different, try another company, try another region. So I left. But before looking for a new job, and my plan was to look for a job in Dubai, and that was back in like 2016 or so. Um, my parents were retiring at the same time. So we decided to go on a road trip together. So we drove from Oman to Paris by car.
Oh.
So we went into the UAE, then we put the boat on a ferry, went into Iran, drove all over Iran, into Armenia, into Georgia, into Abkhazia, then all across Turkey, into Greece, up to Ukraine, and then Paris.
Wow.
And it was the first time that I had two things going on at the same time. I had both time and money.
Yep.
And in life, typically you either have time or you have
Or
money, but you
yep.
rarely have both, or you're old and youth, right? So
Yes.
going through all of these, just going through all these cities, we take our time. We were in no rush. Um, yeah, I'd go check out some real estate agencies. I'd go out, I'd meet people, meet expats, local business people, lawyers, etc. And then I just like some of these markets were really, I mean, it was interesting. The yields were high. The price per square foot was really low. I thought, wow, this is interesting. So I was investigating a little bit, and then gradually I started buying up places. After the trip, I went back to some places and started buying up apartments, doing flips. And I never quite got back to looking for a job. I mean, I never went back to looking for a job. So now it's been almost 10 years that I do this full time. I travel around the world. I invest mostly in emerging and frontier markets, in a lot in real estate, but also equities and venture capital, and manage my own portfolio. And a few years ago, about maybe 6 years ago now, some of my friends were asking me, back when people were still using Facebook, "Hey, Ladislas, like you're in all these like weird countries, and like what do you do? You don't seem to be working. Like what happened to you? Get a
Yeah.
career and all." So then I started blogging to kind of explain what I do.
Right.
and just writing. And it was part of my became part of my uh, kind of an intellectual approach to doing real estate investing. You know, I would test out my thesis for a given market by writing down the thesis essentially. And then people started contacting me. And initially, I'd be like, okay, cool. I'd have free calls with people. After a while, it became a bit too much. I started charging for calls. And then I realized, oh, I think I have a business because
Yep.
there just isn't that sort of on the ground, granular information when it comes to international real estate, especially in emerging markets.
Okay. Yeah. That is an incredible, incredible story. And the intersection of youth, money, and time is so rare, rare. Even us, like when we retired, we're like, well, we retired early, right? But I was 46, my husband was 48. And so I feel like younger than I actually am. But at the same time, like you cannot ignore, the marching of time. Like, things hurt and life just changes and I'm more tired and I feel like my mental acuity is already like I can tell. Sadly, I can just tell a difference. That's like how stressful it is to plan logistics, and that's one of the red tape issues that I've dealt with. So I'll give you an example. Um, During the pandemic, when we were my husband's parents lived just one state over, and it's just a quick jaunt across the state line to go see them. And they were setting up like the things on the state line, telling us like we had to check in when we crossed state lines. And I was getting very concerned. I just felt like, are they going to close down interstate travel? Because I don't, is that constitutional? Like, I just felt myself wondering, like, if they're shutting down even interstate travel and tracking us on our phones when we cross state lines so we can answer questionnaires. I mean, the whole thing just felt very Orwellian to me, and I was very bothered by this. And so I said, okay, you know what we're going to do is Mexico is the easiest place to get a residency permit. Um, and I'm just going to go chase this down. So we got everybody passports because they were so backed up. They're like, it could take you a year to get a passport. And it's like, I just, I don't want to sound like an alarmist, a bug out alarmist, but I definitely felt like exposed, like that we did not have any kind of a plan B. And so I went and got everybody passports and we sat around and waited for months for them to come in. And then I got all of the birth certificates, everything with the international apostille on them so that if we wanted to go, and so I just started going down the route of getting a residency permit, a permanent residency permit in Mexico so that we would just have the ability to have more freedom to cross borders. And I didn't know if Mexico was going to be any better than the United States, but I just felt like, okay, I need a plan B. This is the easiest one to do. And I was kind of doing it on my own. And I realized quickly, like, I need some help. Like, this is harder than I thought it would be, especially on the Mexican side. I feel like I need to hire an attorney once we got down there to take care of everything. Is like all of the groups I was in, like, this is not a DIY type of project. And I became very deflated in the pursuit of this, and I never really got to the part where we get the residency permit because everything settled down and all of that, but I still am feeling very exposed. So I started researching places that US citizens could go long term without a residency permit. So places like Georgia, Albania. And I just started really diving into this world a lot more, especially when you're bumping up against financial freedom. You're like, oh, we could. We ended up just buying an RV and driving around the United States. That was kind of like our substitute, right? So, given all of these issues, the special considerations as Americans, where we have worldwide taxation, we do have a lot of really good visa-free travel. Talk to me about U.S. citizens specifically. We have a massive, massive part of the world that we can just travel around in because of the interstate travel, and then we have a massive part of the world that we can go to with visa-free travel. I just feel a lot of freedom with this passport, and I just found myself like, I don't really know what to do here. I get great tax benefits because I'm a real estate professional here. I mean, I don't ever pay income or capital gains taxes. I just kind of I lost my steam. And so can you kind of speak to maybe Americans in my position where we have maybe some dreams and then once we get looking at the realities, it looks
No.
different.
Yeah, no, I mean, you raise a very important topic. I mean, one, when you're going for immigration, just hire someone.
Yeah.
Like, just hire someone from the get-go. Don't try to do it yourself. It's not worth it. You know, often it'll just be a few $1,000s to have a lawyer help you with your case from A to Z. They
Right.
do it. and you'll go on some Facebook forums or groups, and you'll have people saying, "Oh, people who pay $2,000 to someone to get Paraguay residency get ripped off. Look, I did it myself. Here's
Mm,
the 13-step process."
yeah.
And like and then and then the 13-step process is literally 13 steps that take 3 hours each.
Yeah.
Um, and then if anything goes wrong at like step 9, then you're back at 1,
Yep.
because in the meantime it changes. So it's just not worth it. Just hire someone. So that's number one. Two, in terms of having a plan B, as Americans, to be fair, you there's less of a need for a plan B as an American
Hmm.
compared to other Westerners than if you were British,
Okay.
or if you were Australian or Canadian, for example. Why? One,
Yeah.
because there's just so much diversity politically, within your country.
Okay.
So, when people are not happy in Democrat states, when people are not happy with snow, when people are not happy with whatever, they can just move somewhere else. They can go
Hmm.
to Arizona, they can go to Texas, Florida, or, if they're not happy there, they can move to California. There, there's
Alaska.
there's so much, there's so many more options in the
Yeah.
US for people, right? If you're in
Hmm.
the UK, um, it's a pretty strong government, right? You don't get to avoid the power of government by moving to another state. If you don't agree with that government, you're kind of stuck. You have to leave.
Okay.
In the US, you can mitigate the government that you don't like by
Mm.
moving to a state that is more aligned with your values. Whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, it doesn't matter. So what we see is when there are, like, Canada as an example, a lot of people were just literally fleeing Canada when Trudeau was in power, especially after all the trucker stuff.
Hmm.
They had nowhere to go. They were just going overseas. They were moving to Latin America. They were just leaving. When American clients were calling me during the whole pandemic and were like, "Oh, I don't like the restrictions. Where should I go? Should I go to Nicaragua?" Like, you know what? Just go to Texas,
Australia's worse than this.
right? Like, just go to
That's
Texas.
what we
Uh,
found.
right. And then, so there's that. For a bunch of social issues, if you don't like the social aspect of things, there's usually somewhere in the States that is a lot better than wherever you are in the States right now.
Okay.
You can't say this for most Western European countries or Canada. Now, you also have the issue of taxation. If you're European or if you're Canadian and you leave your country and you become a non-tax resident of your country of origin and you move to a low or zero tax country, if you structure things correctly, you can end up paying 0% taxes, no
Mhm.
matter how much you earn. That's very attractive. As an
Yeah.
American, it's rarely this simple.
Yeah.
The IRS follows you everywhere. They tax you based on your citizenship, not based on your residency. So yes, you can go overseas to a low tax country and benefit from, the foreign earned income allowance and a whole bunch of other things, but there's only so far it takes you. So, it does make a difference, don't get me wrong. But it makes less of a difference, right? So
Right.
for Americans who want a plan B, I'd say do it for sure. I mean, right? If the US is going to change as much in the next 6 years as it has changed in the past 6 years,
Yeah.
I don't know what we'll be looking at, but it's going to be volatile. Um, so having a plan B from the whole thing, is, far from crazy. I'll put it this way.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, it
But there's
feels crazy.
there's less need for it, right? There's less
Mhm.
need.
Okay. Yeah, that really tracks with my own experience looking into this. I mean, I lived abroad before I got married. I spent 4 months in the Czech Republic teaching conversational English at a university, a local university, and it was an incredible, incredible experience. And I
But
wanted to be
why
part of
you're
the
such a good talker?
yes. No, no, no. That just comes naturally. Yeah, but I've encouraged my kids to travel. My oldest daughter, because we have 6 kids, and so she was getting kind of the short end of the stick on traveling with her family because we're not gonna take a bunch of babies and all that. So we sent her with a couple of different organizations. She spent a couple of weeks in Ghana and Accra, a couple of weeks in Patagonia, hiking around the glaciers down there, and just really kind of changed her life. She became fluent in Spanish, and I feel like she was kind of this little international citizen, even though we weren't the ones taking her. And we've made a lot more efforts with our other kids to travel more, but we really haven't done much international travel with them at all. We're just kind of getting to that point where that's on the radar for us. Um, but I don't know. I mean, I feel like one of the things that I've noticed is people who travel a lot and us who've traveled a lot. It was nice to have an RV because we could go to bed in the same bed every single night. And so the real estate aspect of it became very apparent that we needed to think about where we were sleeping and home base, especially for kids. My mom grew up in the military, so she grew up in Europe and moved around every 3 or 4 years, and she didn't really have a home base. And so it became clear to me from her experiences that we needed to set up something where we always come back to this place. And when we're out on the road, we have places that feel like ours, like feel like coming home to different places. So the real estate aspect of having houses kind of scattered around, have you found that to be helpful from a psychological standpoint? Like when you go to a new country, you know how to hotel, you know how to Airbnb and all that, but does having a home and having a real estate presence make a difference for you in a country? Like, how important is that to the lifestyle that you're talking about?
Increasingly important as you age.
Yes. Definitely found that to be true.
Right. So when I was single, roaming around the world didn't really make a difference. Then I got married, and then the more children I have, the more important it becomes.
Okay. Yeah. So similar type of thing. How do you manage that? How do you manage that with kids?
My wife would say not very well.
Yeah, people would say that to me. They're like, "How do you do it with 6 kids?" And my answer was not very well. You just do it.
Yeah, like, yeah, I mean, we're just making it work. I mean, right now we're in, you know, we're in Cambodia, and yeah, like sometimes we book places, they're nice, and sometimes we book places and they're not as nice as the pictures or even
Yep.
the reviews, claim
Mhm.
they are. And we just deal with it. So that's it.
Yeah,
That's it.
same with us. Sometimes we ended up in some pretty seedy places with the kids, and we'd be like, This is not what we were
Mm,
expecting." And I feel like it's given them a broader experience to be like, not all places are
absolutely.
like shielding them from from the world. Um, I mean, just some of the issues that my daughter encountered in Ghana, um, and some of the education they did while they were there and after they got back about the labor situation, about the living situation. I feel like that opened her eyes up in a way that nothing else really ever could have. But it did kind of get me thinking, like, if we do want to travel more, how do you buy property in another country? Like I've never done it. I don't even want to buy property in a
What?
different state a lot of times.
It's no big deal. People make it a bigger
Yeah.
deal than it is. Look, just hire a good lawyer.
Yeah.
You'll watch stuff on YouTube and on, CNN about, Bill who went to name country, Guatemala, and he bought a piece of land, and then it turns out he doesn't own it. Yeah, because Bill went and bought like land through his girlfriend's cousin and signed some random piece of paper, and it's just
Sweet.
if you had hired a lawyer, like you can go to any U.S. embassy website in the world, and there will be the list of not approved lawyers, but of like, a list of law firms that are somewhat serious.
Yeah.
If you contact one of those firms and you say, "Hey, I'm looking to buy this house," they'll be a bit more expensive than the other lawyers, but they'll understand the challenges that
Mhm.
foreigners have purchasing real estate, so you just won't have any problems. That's it. Just hire good lawyers.
Yeah.
Um, and then there are a few benefits that are different from what you would get when investing back home in the US. One is geopolitical diversification, depending on where you buy, right? So you're not all in the US. Um, Currency diversification, depending on whether you invest in the dollar zone or not. So that's also nice in terms of portfolio diversification. Thirdly, yeah, nice holiday, home, whatever, you can get that in the States as well. Thirdly, some countries will grant you residency for buying real estate. So, for example, one that Americans do a lot is Panama. So we help a lot of Americans with that one. Um, and that was really simple. You either buy real estate for $200,000 or make a term deposit for $200,000 for 3 years and you get residency. And you
Hmm.
just need to set foot there once every 2 years for a day to keep it active. So the first 2.5 years, you'll have to go once a year, and then you'll have temporary residency initially, and after 2.5 years, you'll have permanent residency for life, as long as you set foot once every two years for your whole family.
Hmm.
And after the 3 years, you can just take the money back, sell the real estate, or do whatever. So, for example, Emma, if you're sitting on term deposits at Chase, just by making a SWIFT transfer, an international wire to a bank in Panama to an account in your name, this
Hmm.
would grant you and all your children and your husband, as long as they're underage, not the husband, but
Yeah.
that would grant the whole family residency. And then after 3 years, you can send the money back to Chase. So there
Yeah.
are all these, things you can do where you can, you just have so many side benefits. And some countries will even give you citizenship, like an actual passport.
Yeah.
So right? So if you're sitting on $400,000, buy real estate in Turkey for $400,000. Any real
Yeah.
estate in Turkey, and it's pretty affordable, and the yields are decent. You'll make 4 or 5% net after tax, which is not too bad. Big city, Istanbul, 15 million people, huge, and they'll give you citizenship for investing $400,000 in a few apartments altogether. So, and after 3 years, you can sell the real estate, or after five, and not pay local capital gains taxes. So, just by shifting money from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, you can just collect residencies and citizenships. And the citizenship part is cool because you have a Turkish passport, and it goes down the generations. So when your kids have kids, as long as they go register them at the Turkish embassy or consulate or in Turkey, your grandchildren will be Turkish too.
Yeah.
So just by shifting 400K for a few years to another country,
Hmm.
you're making a generational move. All your descendants will be Turkish. All your descendants will have extra visa free travel. All your descendants will have access to different markets.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a lot. It's a lot to consider. I feel like there's so many options. I mean, to be clear, uh, you help people kind of navigate this process of purchasing real estate, these citizenship. So, what kind of help do you give? Um, like the business that you mentioned earlier, the business that you built around people asking how to do this, because it can be kind of laborious with the 13 steps, helping hook people up with resources for attorneys, um, estate agents, real estate itself. Like, describe the services that you offer for your clients around this space.
Yeah, we help people with a strategy, because the most important thing is, what are your objectives, right? And we need to go through your objectives in detail to really understand which jurisdictions are appropriate for you, whether it be for real estate, for residency, for citizenship, and we craft a whole strategy. And we
Mhm.
also are licensed agents from a few governments. So we're licensed agents for the governments of Sierra Leone and Sao Tome. They have citizenship by investment programs.
Mhm.
So if you make a donation, it starts from $90,000. You make a donation of $90,000 to one of those countries, and then within a few months, you will become a citizen and receive your passport with through FedEx.
Okay. And then the generational thing that you were mentioning, the kids and all that. Let's talk military service. Yeah, Americans don't have to do a military service. It's totally voluntary. And I remember when I saw Egypt coming up with their citizenship by investment program, but I know somebody who basically couldn't go back to Egypt as a citizen, and he was very limited on where he could travel in the world, and he had to purchase basically a Caribbean passport because if he went back to visit his family in Egypt, he would have to serve in the military under until he hit a certain age. What kind of military participation are we looking at for kids who get citizenships in some countries? Like, some of them I'm surprised. Like Egypt has a citizenship by, investment, or countries
Yeah.
like that, or even Turkey. It's like, oh, well, they sometimes make people go off and fight in the military. How is that handled with people who purchase a citizenship?
That's a very good question. So typically, I mean, for the case of Egypt and Turkey, if you purchase the citizenship, if you do it through
Mhm.
the citizenship by investment, you will not have to do military service, right?
Okay.
So if you decide to do the Egyptian citizenship by investment or the Turkish, your children, your young male children, they will also be part of that application and they will not have to go through military service. They're
Hmm.
exempt from it. Now, what happens if your children then have children? Let's say your
Yeah.
daughter, older daughter, gets married, she has a kid, she pops a little boy. Yeah, he'll be Turkish from birth.
Okay.
So he would have to do military service. Now, then some people say, well, then it's useless. I won't register my kid for Turkish citizenship. I mean, one, things change, right? The kid still has 18 years before having to do military service. And a lot of things can change in 18 years. It might not be active anymore. But as things stand, for example, a lot of these countries have exemptions for military service. Um, so you can either just, say, I'm just going to renounce citizenship, and simple. You just sign a few documents. It's not like in the US where renouncing is
Boy.
complicated. These countries renouncing is they make it pretty easy because it's actually pretty common because of military service. So
Okay.
they can renounce, or there are these special military services for rich kids. So for rich kids living overseas, because they don't necessarily want the government doesn't want to lose all its diaspora, right?
Hmm.
So they say, well, so instead of doing a year or 18 months, you're going to pay $5,000 and you're going to come for 1 month.
Okay.
But then the
Okay.
1 month is almost like that, the thing Jews do in Israel where they just go and it's just, they're fed good food. And it's like propaganda for a month. It's pretty much that. They just go into a camp, they shoot guns, they learn about their Turkish identity and it's like nationalism and then they go back to Germany.
Okay.
So, and like your kid who doesn't speak Turkish would be there, and it's just like, what would people do? It's just like, okay, he'd probably be the one like washing the floor because like they can't really do anything with him. Um,
Yeah.
but he won't be sent to the southeast to go fight, Kurdish insurgents.
Yeah.
It's not what they do. So I'd say it's not much of a worry. If anything, it might be a cool experience. I mean, yeah, like I have clients, they're kind of looking forward to telling their kids, say, hey, you're 17, you need to make a decision. You want to be Turkish? No. Cool. Sign this, renounce. If you want to be Turkish, just go to Turkey for a month. I'll pay for the exemption. You don't have to do a year and a half. Just, yeah, go to some summer camp there.
Okay. I mean, because there are benefits to the countries offering these residency citizenships. I like we actually joined a group for Portugal specifically, um, to how to buy real estate in Portugal for a residency permit, and the program just kept shrinking and shrinking and shrinking. Like, okay, first anywhere, then only in these areas and these amounts, and so it became more limited as the program was more effective in attracting a foreign investment, foreign residency in their real estate sector. They started shrinking the program down, and I feel like, the best days of that Portugal, uh, golden visa are kind of behind
Mhm.
it, but it did kinda get me thinking like, "Okay, what other areas could we get into that might turn into something like what the success that Portugal had?" So they're not gonna, like you said, they don't wanna lose their diaspora, and they also don't want to make it so unattractive to go buy a residency or citizenship that people are like, "Why would I do that? Then my grandkids have to go fight, Kurdish insurgents." So, those kind of things you have to understand why the country is doing it so that you can kinda understand what your advantage is in participating in that system, because they wanna make it an attractive thing for people to do. So, just kinda bearing that in mind. So kind of wrap up for
Also,
us.
I'd add, before wrapping up, I'd add we have Ukrainian clients. They have a
Yes,
different problem.
yes.
They were lucky enough to be outside of Ukraine when the war started, or they managed to leave, and
Okay.
now they're living outside of Ukraine, and they have a passport that's about to expire,
Uh-huh.
or a passport that, they could lose, or a passport that is running out of pages,
Mm.
because they've been traveling too much. And to renew, the Ukrainian embassies are saying, "Oh no, sorry, you're a male of military age. We can't renew these at embassies anymore. You need to go home." Then they're
Yeah.
stuck, right? So
Yep.
they can't travel anymore. They're just wherever they are. They're on refugee status, without a passport, completely, dependent.
Mhm.
So these people are buying passports from us because they can travel again. So that's another use case. If you believe that potentially there could be a hot conflict,
Yeah.
between the US and some other country in the next decades, um, y- having another passport would be useful, because then if you're lucky enough to not be in the borders when it happens, or usually in the first few days, you can still manage to leave, especially if you have a residency card to Mexico because you're going home, right? Um, then when they say, "Hey, no, we're not renewing your US passport because you've been drafted," well, guess what? You're, traveling the world on a Turkish passport.
Yeah.
So that's also the use case of a second passport, if you feel that, the risk of conflict and draft is coming.
I mean, I don't personally feel that risk, but like I said, my mom grew up in the military in Europe. So when I told her when I was 18 years old, "Hey, I'm moving to a communist bloc country," and it was like 1995, I think. And so it was pretty raw and frontier type of place. And because she grew up, her dad was a bomber in World War II, and Europe was a nightmare as far as from a security standpoint. And I had never grown up in that kind of thing. And so she was seeing this incredibly dangerous Europe from her youth. She was seeing this incredibly dangerous Eastern Europe that I had grown up with, the Cold War stuff. And I didn't realize it as an 18-year-old, but now as a mother, my kid told me I want to go into this place that was just war torn just recently. It's not a big deal. So I don't kind of feel that in my own life, but my mom did, and I kind of have to respect like where she's coming from, because it was not that long ago that even Western Europe was a mess from, like you said, hot conflict, and it can turn on a dime. So I don't want to get too complacent in the security, because I definitely do not feel that viscerally the way that she did. But I also recognize how fast that stuff can happen. I mean, we spent time in Ukraine, like, we had no idea that something like that could happen. I felt perfectly safe in traveling around Eastern Europe, and now I don't, like, not right now. So, yeah, it can turn on a dime. So while you say there's not as much need for plan B, uh, I personally still feel, and maybe it's because my mom's upbringing, I still personally feel there needs to be some thought about uh, a plan B situation just for optionality. And we talk about that all the time with financial freedom. You got to have like multiple streams of income. I see this in kind of the same vein, multiple streams of freedom or options. Would that be safe to sum up there? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah, and hire an expert. That's what I'm hearing. Like, just to hire a good attorney. If you, That's like when I tell people before they put money into a company or put money into a real estate project, it's as a passive investor, like they're purchasing a security. They'll put 50 grand or 100 grand into a deal, but they won't spend two, three, four, $5,000 to do their due diligence, like background checks, going and visiting the property, going and visit the person who's operating it, and just hiring somebody who can look at the financials or the criminal history of the company or the people. It's like you're not willing to spend a couple $1,000s before you go place 50 or $100,000 into a deal. This is kind of the same thing. It's like you have $400,000 or $250,000 to go purchase a citizenship or to purchase a piece of real estate. Um, there got to be some costs involved with that, and just kind of get your head wrapped around that. Would that be a fair
Yeah.
assumption?
Don't be cheap. Don't be cheap.
Yeah. Yeah, but you also don't have to spend, you don't have to buy the Rolls Royce. If
Sure.
there are options out there, I think, and you're one of those um that we should consider, that you can kind of hook us up with some good resources, um and not make us feel like we got ripped off afterwards. 'Cause I do see that a lot in the expat communities, like, oh, I got ripped off from this or got ripped off from that. And people are so afraid to hire because they feel like there's so much fraud, and there's so many scams out there, even from the attorneys or even from the advisors. Um, Hiring somebody that is trustworthy, has actually done it, can be it's a challenge in and of itself. So like to kind of wrap up for us, like how do you find someone who knows what they're doing and is honest and reputable?
It's not always easy, to be honest with you. Trial and error. And
Yeah.
then also now I'm pretty lucky. I get a lot of referrals from people I know, et cetera, who've already worked with people. So
Mhm.
from that point of view, my job's a lot easier. Like if I go to some random country, I already know a bunch of people that have done stuff there, and I can just reach out to them.
Okay. Yeah. So somebody's actually done it and makes a lifestyle
Yeah.
doing it is a big one. Um, and I personally go with gut check, like how hustled do I feel? Like the way that they're speaking,
Yeah.
the things that they're telling me, like how too good to be true does this sound and how salesman-y does it feel? And that's one of my big gut checks. Although one of our best real estate agents that we've ever had, he had that kind of hustle mentality and that salesman kind of I've got a deal for you type of attitude. And we almost didn't hire him because of that. Um, but then he kept coming back with options and resources. And I was
I
like,
thought he
well, and
turns
he
out he
ended up,
did have a deal for you.
he really did. And it was so good that we referred him to like, he did deals with like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 10 of our friends because we kept referring him out because he was the real deal. But his, I'm not saying the gut check there is 100% accurate because I have been proven wrong. It was the first house we ever bought, right? So I've learned that lesson, but I still kind of check in with myself, like how hustled do I feel right now? And
Yeah.
then with him, I felt very hustled, but we still did our due diligence on him, and it ended up being good. So the gut check alone is not good enough. That's my point. So is there anything you want to share that I have not asked you about, like a big thing that you're like, oh, the listener needs to know this, but I didn't ask you.
I think we're good. We're
Oh,
37 minutes. We're good here.
perfect. I agree. All right. So how do people get a hold of you if they want to engage your services or just ask you for some references or referrals or research topics?
Sure. So I'd recommend people sign up to my free newsletter, Notes from the Road, on thewanderinginvestor.com. I also have a YouTube channel, X, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. The Wandering Investor.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Definitely reach out to Ladislas. I like um I like the no nonsense approach that you have to doing this. It's actually refreshing in the space. So if you want to get a hold of me, it's easy. Investwithemma.com takes you straight to my calendar. You want to talk about any of the things we've talked about on the show, or you need connections to anybody you've seen on the show, or um, just ideas. Like that's what I do. I'm the idea girl. So looking forward to talking to you, and we will see you next week on our next episode of Passive Income Adventures. Thank you so much, Ladislas, for joining us today and educating us on this. Like it's a deep topic, so I appreciate you trying to take a stab at it.
My pleasure.
See you next time.